It was the middle of summer, and my parents had left for the weekend to go to our house in Cape Cod. It's about a 2-hour drive away, so it's no big deal for them to leave me alone for a few days. My mom had made me some pulled pork and pasta for me to heat up and eat whenever, and I had some money if I wanted to order a pizza. Things were all good. The first night I was alone, I stayed up till 3 in the morning playing Xbox, so I woke up really late the next day. I checked on my phone when I woke up and saw it was a little past 1. I had made some plans to play some street hockey with my friends at 3, so I threw myself out of bed and stumbled into the shower. I take really long showers, so when my parents are gone, I go mental. I was in there for about 45 minutes on my phone, scrolling through Reddit and Twitter and whatnot, when I heard my front door open. The bathroom is directly upstairs from the back door, and the thing is pretty loud when it opens and closes. I immediately froze, since obviously I was supposed to be alone. I waited for about 2 minutes, ears trained in, trying to hear anything else. Nothing. I figured it was just the wind, or maybe my parents were home early, so I turned off the shower, wrapped my towel around myself, and slowly walked down the stairs to check it out. The stairs to the kitchen, where the back door is, are pretty tight and walled in, so it's essentially like walking downstairs in a narrow hallway, so I can't see into the kitchen when I walk down. Even though my house is old, and each step on the stair makes a super loud creak, I still took my time and tried to be as quiet as possible. I probably took 45 seconds walking down all 12 of the stairs, so when I get to the second to last stair, right before I could see around the corner into the kitchen, I take a little breath to compose myself. In my mind, I knew I was being stupid. There obviously wasn't anything in the kitchen. There's no way I wouldn't have heard another noise, and there's no reason for them to still be in the kitchen, even if there were burglars or something in the house. After sort of mentally chastising myself for being such a wuss, I sort of chuckled to myself for being so stupid and just normally walked down the last 2 stairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. Standing about 2 feet away from me in the middle of the kitchen is a man staring straight at me, perfectly still, with a massive smile across his face, just staring at me. The thing I remember most vividly wasn't his face or his smile, but his arms. They weren't just at his side. He held them in a strange, most abnormal position I've ever seen. They were where one would normally hold their arms, but he had rotated them to the point where they were almost completely reversed, as well as lifting them up and a little behind himself. I don't know why I remember this so much, but it's just the most demonic, abnormal position I've ever seen. Honest to God, I think I almost had a heart attack right there. Looking back, I realized how freaking creepy this situation was. But in the moment, with the adrenaline, I just took a step towards him and punched him as hard as I could in the jaw, sort of half slapping / pushing him towards the ground. The second I connected, I beelined it up the stairs, dropping my towel in the kitchen with my heart beating out of control. I freaking sprinted into my room and locked the door behind me. I quickly put a chair up against the doorknob like you see in TV. Almost without thinking, I immediately called 911 and nearly in tears told the operator what happened. As I sat on the floor of my room, in practically the fetal position, staring at the door, praying that a cop would be here soon, I noticed the light coming from the gap between the door had stopped. This sicko was standing outside of my door. There's no words to describe the feeling I had. I was paralyzed with fear, watching the shadow across the bottom of the door shift in tiny ways as he just stood there, breathing heavily. I stayed balled up, staring at the gap, praying the man would go away for what seemed like an hour. All the while, the 911 operator was asking, "Hello? Sir? Sir, are you there? Hello?" I didn't want to make a noise, and even if I wanted to move my arms to bring the phone to my mouth, I don't think I could have. Eventually, the light returned to the gap, and I heard the faintest of footsteps, slowly creaking the wooden floorboards as he walked down the hall. It was silent for minutes, as I just sat there curled up, unable to even speak. I heard banging on the front door and the sound of the 2 officers entering my house. I finally felt safe, and I opened the door to the 2 of them standing there, and I almost cried. Nowadays, my parents don't even leave me home alone anymore, thank God, and I check every lock on the house before going to bed. I still get nightmares occasionally, and my heart starts racing whenever I see someone standing still. But I'm doing alright, even working with sketch artists and a few lineups. The police never found whoever was in my house. That sends shivers down my spine. Every time I look outside, half expecting to see him standing across the street, smiling under a lamppost. The worst part is, I have no idea who he was or what his intentions truly were.
A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, as I had never smelled that before around that house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired, even though it wasn't even 7 yet. I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark. And this particular phone was so bright, I could see it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leaped out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I had opened the door and stepped inside. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms, one on either side of the hallway, the one I was in, and a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access and the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in the corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in the bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic, just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away, and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, but I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I'd heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I'd expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped. All the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed and canned foods had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, the only thing that was missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often used to smoke meth. So they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realized that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with my family or friends that night and get that door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts and foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and sides of my house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house, though. I lived there another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going to my closet, and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I tried not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting into the attic, or if he hadn't gone into the bathroom at the end of the hall first. This encounter happened to me a while ago. I couldn't share for a long time. For some background, I live out in the country in Ohio down a long drive, fields on both sides and woods in the back. I'm about a mile away from town, so if I need police, I have to call the sheriff. I live with my husband and a boxer. The night this happened, my husband was getting some overtime at his factory. It was a Saturday and he was working third shift. I had spent the evening at my parents' house and didn't head home until around midnight. I stopped in town at our 24-hour gas station to get some drinks and chocolate and a beef jerky stick for my dog Daisy. As I exit the gas station, I get this feeling that's so strong. I just look around because I knew someone was outside with me. Over to my left, about 20 feet away, is a girl in a really cute little dress with a white horse mask on, just standing there. We stared at each other for a minute before I hopped into my car and quickly pulled out onto the road, almost hitting a light pole as I belatedly checked my backseat for danger. That was unnerving, but I was home just a few minutes later, giving Daisy jerky and eating chocolate and watching TV. All of a sudden, my dog takes off down the hall to the back porch, barking and growling and attacking the window. I run in there afraid a window was going to get broke again. Daisy broke a window trying to get a coyote once already. That's when I stopped dead in my tracks. There, standing at the window, is a horse mask. Again, we stared at each other. I looked over to the back door. Was it locked? Shoot, I couldn't remember. Horse mask looks over at the door. Slowly, I walk over to it. So does horse mask. We both reach for the knob. It was locked. Horse mask looks behind her, and for the first time, I look around my backyard. There is a guy in a horse mask too. I'm like, okay, this is enough. I'm calling the cops. I got Daisy and shut the door to the porch and went to the living room to get my cell phone. Of course, I left my phone in the car when I carried my stuff in the house. In my car that's in my garage. My dark garage. Basically lacking any choice, I opened the door to the garage and tried to open my car door. But oh, guess what? I must have locked it and didn't have the keys. I crept back into the house. No sign of Daisy. No horse mask in the backyard that I could see from the kitchen window. I grabbed my keys and got the phone. I called the sheriff and told them about what happened and that I was followed home and alone. They asked if they were still outside. I looked out of the window, room by room. Nothing, until I got to my front yard. Right out front, there they were. Just standing about 100 feet away holding hands. Staring. I honestly was crying at this point at the dispatcher, who assured me someone would be there soon. As I stood there, clearly on the phone, the girl waved. Then they walked hand in hand down my lane, out of sight. It took the sheriff 10 minutes to get there. They found nothing. Told me the guy probably sat in a car and they followed me. Just kids being kids, they said. My dog didn't come out of my bedroom the rest of the night. I sat up listening to silence until my husband got home.
So this happened to me 2 years ago when I was 18. I need to set up the scenery of my house so that the location makes sense. I live in an upper middle class neighborhood that resides in the middle of a golf course. The course wraps around and intertwines with the neighborhood. I live in one of the most remote locations of the neighborhood, where we have no access to the main roadway. Furthermore, our house is a 2-story on about 1 acre. On the first floor is a kitchen, bedroom, office, and living room with a couple bathrooms. The second floor is a couple bedrooms along with bathrooms and a room we use for social gatherings. Along the back of the house, we also have a deck with metal and wicker furniture. Now that the setting is out of the way, it was on a rare Saturday that I didn't have to work, and I wanted the day to relax and not go anywhere or do anything. My parents know I never really got days off, let alone a weekend off, so they were okay with letting me stay home alone when they were out of town for the day. They were going out of town to shop at a nearby mall and wouldn't be home until late. Honestly, I don't remember where my brother was. Well, anyway, it was a pretty normal day by myself. A lot of nothingness was accomplished until it got dark. I decided to come out of my room and watch TV in the living room, since my new dog wasn't accustomed to the stairs yet and would hardly walk up them. So sitting on the couch, I noticed my pup growling, and the hair on the back of her neck was standing up. For clarification, at this point, it's around 11 p.m. and I cannot see outside at all. I try to calm my dog down, but she's getting really hyper. I'm getting anxious now too, because something is really upsetting her. So I walk upstairs and pick up my BB gun I have in my room. I figure, if someone is out there, I just have to stand inside with it and they'll think it's real. Well, after coming down with the BB gun, I take a step over the baby gate we have to keep our pup from peeing on the carpet and I hear tapping. Someone or something is tapping on the glass window next to where I was sitting, and my dog had hid behind my legs. I lifted the BB gun up, acting like I was going to shoot. When I saw through the window, a figure jumped over and off the deck railing. I quickly called my parents. Yeah, I should have called the police, but I wasn't thinking. Well, around midnight, they got home and turned on the deck lights. We instantly noticed that one of our metal chairs were pulled very far out of place and positioned to look inside the house where I was sitting before. We never did call the cops about the incident, but when I was coming home from work about a week later, I pulled into the driveway around 10 p.m. where my headlights lit up a person hiding beside a tree. This was a full-grown adult wearing a long black coat in the middle of June. We did eventually call the police about that, but I have an inkling that it was the same guy.